Hello, everyone, and welcome to the training seminar for third and fourth grade math with confidence. I'm so delighted to be here with you this afternoon or on the recording for people who are watching it later. And I'm excited to spend this next hour or so walking you through how to get ready for the year, what your child will learn, and giving you an overview of the program. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start with the goals and philosophy of Math with Confidence for the program as a whole. Then I'll give you an overview of the third and fourth grade levels and walk you through the books. Third, you'll learn about what your child will learn this year, and I'll spend some time talking about how Math with Confidence approaches the multiplication and division facts. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to prep for the year. I will talk about some common questions, answers to common questions that I often hear from parents. And then finally, there will be time for an open Q&A at the end. You'll notice also that my assistant, Donna Hunter, is here in the Zoom. She is a veteran homeschool mom and also a pilot tester for the upper levels of Math with Confidence. And so she'll be answering questions along the way and helping me moderate the questions at the end. So if you have your books, I recommend having them nearby. It could be helpful to just look at them and look things up as I'm talking about them. All right, so let's start here with the goals and philosophy of Math with Confidence. So Math with Confidence is a comprehensive grade level curriculum for kindergarten through fifth grade at this point. Sixth grade will be coming out next summer in 2026, and that will be the final level in the program. And as I write the program, I've had three goals in mind. First of all, my primary goal is to help children develop a conceptual understanding of math, so they understand the why of math and not just the how. My hope is that children will see math as a connected body of knowledge, not just a whole bunch of procedures that they have to memorize. Because this leads to deeper learning, better retention, and overall more satisfaction with learning when you understand what's going on. Second, I aim to help kids develop proficiency with essential skills because, conceptual understanding is great, but if you can't actually solve problems in the real world, your math isn't going to do you much good. And so I also seek to help children learn those procedures for how to find answers and to become fluent and skillful at finding answers in math. And then third, I aim to help kids develop a positive attitude towards math. They don't have to love math. It doesn't have to be their favorite subject, but I hope that they'll approach their math lessons with a sense of enjoyment, of looking forward to what they're going to learn, and not a feeling of dread or fear or tears. And with all of these three things, with conceptual understanding, proficiency with essential skills, and a positive attitude, it just helps kids to be successful and feel confident in math. So the philosophy of the program is more about how I try to accomplish that in the program. So first of all, Math with Confidence focuses on one new concept at a time to help develop that conceptual understanding. Each lesson adds just a little bit more depth to the previous day. And so it builds just slowly and gradually, just one little bit at a time. This is often called a mastery approach to new topics, where you focus on one topic at a time and then build on it and explore it deeply. But just don't let that word mastery fool you. It doesn't mean that your child needs to master every single lesson or every single skill before moving on to the next one. It's more about the general approach to knowledge that the program takes. So that helps develop a conceptual understanding, but then daily practice and review is what really helps kids develop proficiency and fluency with those important skills. Because getting fluent with any skill takes a lot of practice. I can tell you the theory about, well, I don't know anything at all, but if I can't actually do it, it's not very useful to me. And it takes a lot of practice to get there. So there is review every single day in Math with Confidence in the workbook that provides that ongoing review of the core skills. And this is sometimes called the spiral approach to review because your child returns to the same topic over and over in a spaced out way, just kind of like has a curve of a spiral as the curve returns to the same spot, but a little further along down the line. And this also helps with long-term memory. When review is spaced out, it helps kids to remember it better. So Math with Confidence is roughly equivalent for level-wise to United States public school grade levels. This varies, of course. Not all schools teach exactly the same material, but I aim to provide just thorough, rigorous coverage of the grade level topics for each grade. Now, when you compare it to homeschool programs, it's generally considered a middle of the road difficulty level. It's not the easiest, but it's also not the most challenging. It's right in the middle there. And that's on purpose. It's not meant to be hard. I've really tried, I've worked with pilot testers at every level of math with confidence is pilot tested by anywhere from 150 to 200 families. So I get a lot of feedback on what's working, what's not, where the jumps were too hard, where they were too small, to really kind of dial in that difficulty level. And my goal is that the learning is very incremental and that the practice problems are very doable, that the child can use what they learned in the lesson to solve the practice problems. Because math doesn't have to be hard to be effective. And a lot of the time when kids use programs that have a greater level of difficulty, they end up with more frustration rather than more learning. Or parents sometimes end up spending a lot of time explaining problems without there being a lot of extra learning to go along with it. And so that's why I've aimed to make Math with Confidence a middle of the road program that develops really strong conceptual understanding, proficiency with essential skills without much frustration, because that's what builds that confidence and that positive attitude. And even though Math with Confidence is, middle of the road in difficulty level, because families have found it to be so effective in helping their children learn and remember math, they generally feel very good with the results. And this is just wanted to share with you, these are the standardized test results of some of the fifth grade pilot test students. They took this test at the end of their fifth grade pilot year in spring of 2024. And the parents were overall delighted and sometimes very surprised by how well their kids did. A full 75% of the kids scored at the 98th or 99th percentile on this test. And you can see that their mean and median grade level was right around eighth grade. Over half of the kids were at 99th percentile or better with that median percentile rank. And so there's no guarantees about what kind of standardized test scores your kid's going to get with Math with Confidence. I cannot guarantee anything like that. But I just want to reassure you that just because it's middle of the road difficulty level doesn't mean it gets middle of the road results. So now that's kind of a general overview of the whole program. Now let's talk about the third and fourth grade levels more specifically. So for both third and fourth grade, you will need 3 books. One book is the instructor guide, that's for you as the instructor. And then your child will need 2 workbooks. Part A covers the first half of the school year, and Part B covers the second half of the school year. And so if you're coming from second grade Math with Confidence, that's different. There's 2 workbooks this year instead of just one. And that's because there's 3 workbook pages per lesson. And so we didn't want those workbooks to be too big. We wanted them to be able to lie pretty flat. And so we divided it into 2 workbooks. The vast majority of the instruction is in the instructor guide. And then the practice and review is in the workbooks. Although you'll also use the workbooks in third and fourth grade during the lesson, not just after it, as it was in second grade. So here's the structure for both books. And this is a little different than first or second grade, if that's what you're coming from for third. So there are 16 units per book, and then there are 6 to 12 lessons per unit. They are not divided into weeks anymore as they were in second grade. And that's because I got harder and harder to kind of separate all the lessons into little groups of 4, and I wanted to have a little more flexibility in my unit structure. So that's the reason for that change. And then now they're in third and fourth grade. The final lesson of each unit has an optional enrichment activity, as well as a unit wrap up, which is a way to assess your child's progress in that unit. And I'll show you an example of that a little bit for later in the presentation. Most of the pilot test families spent about 25 to 35 minutes per lesson. But of course, that's going to vary a lot depending on what else is going on in your household and just kind of the general speed of your kids. Some kids have quick processing speeds and move right through things, and others need a little more time. But that's a good general guideline. For most families, that meant about 10 to 15 minutes of parent-led instruction and about 15 to 20 minutes of independent work. And in both of the books, there's about 144 lessons, and with like 128 are regular lessons and 16 are the unit wrap up and enrichment lessons. So if you teach 4 lessons per week and teach the enrichment lessons, it's 36 weeks of work. And if you teach 4 lessons per week and skip the enrichment lessons, it's 32 weeks. So quite comparable to the first and second grade level, just kind of organized in a different way. So now let's take a look and I'll give you a little tour of inside the books. So this is each unit begins with a unit overview, and it will tell you what your child will learn. There's a list of the lessons in the unit, so you can get a preview that way of what's coming. There's a list of whatever extra materials you'll need for that unit. Sometimes there's a few household items that are needed, like here this is the beginning of third grade. You'll need 6 toothpicks, a white crayon, a marker, highlighter. So just real simple household things that you likely have around. And then sometimes there's also extra materials needed for the enrichment lesson. And the picture book recommended in the enrichment lesson is listed here too. Then there's also a feature called Teaching Math with Confidence. And this is where I provide a little teacher knowledge to you, the parent, to help you grow as a math teacher as you're teaching your child. So I really recommend reading those and using those to kind of grow and make sure that you're understanding the concepts as you get ready to teach each unit. So then this is an overview of a lesson. This is one of the core lessons from the instructor guide. And there's these black and white pages are what you'll see in your instructor guide. And then the color page is the page from your student workbook. If you're coming from second grade, this is a little bit of a change. There's now a lesson activities page that you will use along with the instructor guide. And you will write on that rather than writing out equations on a piece of paper or index cards or separately. And this is a change so that it really streamlines your process. It's less for you to write out, and it helps make the lessons go a little bit faster. And you can see at the top, it says lesson activities, and there are two heads at the top of this to show that this is not a page for your child to do on their own, but a page for you to do with your child. So looking closer at this lesson, each lesson begins with a box that tells the purpose of the lesson and any materials you'll need, as well as a couple memory work questions. Don't miss those. They're a great way to just do a quick review of important information that will help your child remember things like our times in the morning, AM or PM, measurement conversions, vocabulary words. That's where those are reviewed. Next, there's a warm-up, and in this lesson, the warm-up is practicing repeated addition. It's just a quick oral activity. Then we get to the first activity, and you can see that it's marked with an A, which matches the A on the workbook page. So that's how you know what part of the workbook page matches the instructor guide directions. And so everything is printed there in the lesson activities page for you, and then you can just start reading. You read the bold text, and then the regular text tells you what to do. And gray boxes are just notes to you. They're a little extra information. You can skip right over them. If you're reading it aloud to your child, you can skip right over it, but take a look if you have questions or wondering more about the lesson. They often provide more details. So in this lesson, the activity A continues, and then we get to activity B, where your child will use counters and some little boxes to make cookie orders at the cookie store and write matching multiplication equations. Then after you've completed the lesson activities page with your child will have two workbook pages, a practice and review page. The first page, this practice page, always practices what you just taught your child in your hands-on lesson. And then the review provides that continual daily review of those core skills. So while this lesson was about introducing multiplication, the review is about writing money amounts, doubling numbers, place value, addition, subtraction, and some basic fractions. So just a little bit of practice on lots of core skills in those pages. So that previous lesson was one of the core regular lessons in the unit, and each final lesson in a unit is this unit wrap-up, picture book, and enrichment activity lesson called the enrichment lesson. These are completely optional. You can skip them entirely if you don't have time for them, or you can also pick and choose. You can decide to do just the unit wrap-up and skip the picture book and activity, or vice versa. And so in this one, there's a picture book recommended, and then I think it's making arrays of snacks because you've been working on multiplication in this unit. And you can see the unit wrap-up has 2 pages. There's no review page for the unit wrap-ups. And they just provide, you can use them either as a review to kind of, here's all the things you learned in Unit 2, or you can use them as an assessment to have your child do these without any help and see where your child really learned some material, where they might need a little extra help. And if you need to keep a portfolio for like a state evaluator or for a virtual charter school, definitely hold on to these. They're a great way to show what your child has learned and a great way to show growth over the course of the year. All right, so speaking of what your child will learn, let's talk about what the content is of third and fourth grade. So in third grade, your child will learn how to add and subtract and place value with numbers to 10,000. You'll spend a lot of time on multiplication and division, understanding the concept of multiplication, division, learning the facts, and then doing some simple mental multiplication and long division. Along with all of that will be both one-step and multi-step word problems. And then perimeter and area of rectangles is also a new concept in third grade. Beyond that, your child will learn how to add and subtract fractions with the same denominator and do some more work with basic fractions. Your child will learn how to add and subtract money amounts, calculate elapsed time, do some basic measurement conversions like 2 feet and 4 inches. How many inches is that? And then also there's units on geometry and spatial reasoning, both with 2D and 3D shapes. Multiplication and division, though, gets a lot of the time in third grade. In fourth grade, your child will learn how to add and subtract numbers to the millions and understand place value to the millions. He'll spend a lot of time on mental multiplication division and then lots of time on written multiplication and long division. He'll learn how to add and subtract fractions and mixed numbers. And those are ones with the same denominator again. And then he'll learn how to find equivalent fractions. You'll provide an introduction to decimals. And then she'll learn more about area and perimeter, go a little deeper there. And she'll also learn how to measure angles and degrees. Fourth grade has a big focus on degrees and using a protractor, and then adding and subtracting measurements beyond just simple conversions. And so again, multiplication and division get a whole lot of focus here in fourth grade. And this is just a way to visualize this progression of skills in third and fourth grade for multiplication and division. So in third grade, you'll start with that concept to help your child understand what multiplication and division mean. Then spend a lot of time learning the math facts and just start to touch on some simple mental math and just a little introduction to basic long division. Then in fourth grade, you'll review the math facts at the beginning of the year, then move on to more complex mental math with multiplication, division, and then finally teach your child the written process for stacking numbers, for example, for multiplication and using the traditional written process to multiply them out, and using long division to divide numbers up to 4 digits by 1 digit. And since multiplication and division are such a big part of third and fourth grade, I want to spend just a little time here talking about the approach to the multiplication facts that you'll use in Math with Confidence and just provide some tips because these multiplication facts are they're just absolutely key towards success in math in the long haul. I've seen research that shows that kids understanding of the math facts in upper elementary is often a really good predictor of how well they'll do in algebra down the road. Because having these facts ready to go, fluent in their head, will help them with so many other skills as they get to fractions, decimals, percents, algebra, and beyond. But it shouldn't be a high pressure situation. I don't want you to be like, oh my gosh, my kid doesn't know the multiplication facts well enough because it takes a lot of time. So we're just going to walk through the approach to multiplication facts and how to approach it and what to do if you feel like your child isn't learning them quite fast enough. So the overall approach for multiplication facts in math Math with Confidence is to tackle one group of facts at a time to learn the times 2 table, the times 3, the times 4, and so on. And overall, we'll use strategies, not rote memorization. Children will learn how to use the facts they know as a stepping stone to the more difficult facts. And you'll use a lot of concrete and visual representations so that your child understands those strategies thoroughly and doesn't have to just remember them abstractly. In general, you'll focus on teaching the strategy, developing conceptual understanding of the strategy, and then giving your child lots of practice for fluency. So there are kind of 2 steps: understanding how to find understanding the process of finding the facts, but then practicing and practicing to get more fluent at each set of facts. And then finally, there's lots of patience involved in how you'll teach the multiplication facts, And that's because it just takes a lot of time to develop fluency. It really depends on individual children how long it takes for them to learn a particular set of multiplication facts. And so there'll be lots and lots of practice over third and fourth grade so children become fully fluent with them. And so this is, if you want, kind of, if you're a visual person, the way to think about how you'll teach the multiplication facts is your child will learn the strategy and practice those facts, and then you'll loop back and start again with a new set. And as I said, having visual and concrete ways to learn the multiplication facts is very important so that kids just don't have a jumble of strategies in their head. And one of the key visuals we'll use is the dot array and L cover. So this dot array, you can see it's labeled like a multiplication table at the top. And then the L cover is something you'll cut out of paper and slide on top of the dot array to show a certain amount of it. So for example, to show 6 times 8, you'll slide the L cover over the dot array so that 6 rows are showing and 8 columns. And that so we know that there's 6, but it's a 6 by 8 array of dots. And then here's an example of how you'll use strategies to teach your child the multiplication facts. 6 times 8 is one of those classic facts that children often have difficulty with. But when you break it down, it's not so hard. So the 6 facts come after the 5 facts, and children usually memorize the times 5 facts really quite easily. So they know that 5 groups of 8 equals 40, or 5 times 8 equals 40. So in that part of the array, there's 40 dots. And then we add on one more group of 8, which is 1 times 8, or 8 dots. And now if you just add those together, we know, oh, we've got 6 groups of 8. 40 plus 8 is just 48, so 6 times 8 equals 48. And while it might feel a little cumbersome right now, and it's a little bit to work through, it takes some patience to work through those for those tricky sixes. It becomes automatic and it provides a stepping stone for kids to also learn how to memorize it. So when they forget it, they can figure it out quickly. And as they figure it out more and more times, it gets more stuck in their minds. And using this kind of stepping stone approach, using facts you know to figure out the facts you don't know, it really makes the fact mastery less overwhelming because there's 10 strategies to learn instead of 100 separate facts to learn from up to 10 times 10. And that often makes it more efficient in the long run because there's fewer individual things that have to be learned. It takes some time to learn each strategy, but the payoff is that kids remember them and then learn an entire table at once. It gives kids a really deep number sense, of course, as they're wrestling with these numbers, breaking them apart and putting them back together again. It reinforces the idea that math makes sense, the idea that like this is where they come from and that I can use strategies to figure things out. And then it also teaches skills that transfer beyond the multiplication facts. The distributive property is a really important part of multiplication instruction in upper elementary. It's the idea that you can multiply in parts and then add them together to find a total. And that's previewed by the strategy I just showed you. In that problem, to find 6 times 8, we find 5 times 8 and 1 times 8, add them together to find 6 times 8. And so this stepping stone approach also really helps kids develop a strong understanding of the properties of multiplication while they're learning the multiplication facts. So for most kids, full fluency with the multiplication division facts is a 2-year process. So I want to give you a sense of what's kind of a realistic timeline for most kids. So by the end of 3rd grade, the goal is that most children will know the answers to most of the multiplication facts up to 10 times 10 in 3 seconds or less. It's okay if they have to stop and think for a few seconds, but they should know most of the answers in 3 seconds or less. By the end of 3rd grade, most children will be starting to know answers to the easier facts automatically, but they'll still be working. So that's, like 4 times 6 or 8 times 3. But they'll still be working on those tricky 6s, 7s, and 8s. 7 times 7, and 9s are probably in there too. 6 times 9. Those often they're still working on at the end of 3rd grade. And then they also, by this point, they'll have worked through the division facts as well, and they'll know answers to most of the related division facts, probably automatically for those easier facts, still working on it for those harder facts. By the end of 4th grade, most children will know the answers to most of those multiplication facts automatically. You'll practice those tricky ones a lot more at the beginning of 4th grade. And they'll be able to find answers to the 6s, 7s, 8s, maybe 9s too, within a few seconds. and they'll know the answers to most division facts automatically. So if you're starting third grade, just make sure you're being realistic about that it might take until really the end of fourth grade, especially get all those harder facts down and to really be fluent with all of it. That's perfectly normal. You're not doing anything wrong. Your kid's not doing anything wrong. And so, to help your child achieve that, just a couple tips. One is to focus on quality over quantity when you're teaching your child the strategies, when your child's learning the strategies. Allow your child to use the dot array as much as needed. There's a Blackline Master with a list of strategies for your child to refer to. If it's helpful to have that visual in front of him. Um, and it's okay to just do a few problems at a time. If your child takes a bit to think them through, it's okay to just do a few of the problems from the instructor guide or cross out some of the problems in the workbook. Also, allow your child to use other efficient strategies if she'd prefer. You'll teach your child specific strategies in the scripted lessons in the teacher's guide, but those aren't required. Your child can use other strategies as long as they're efficient and accurate. However, do discourage mindless skip counting. And skip counting it can be a little controversial among people. So I want to be really clear what I mean by that. A lot of skip counting is helpful. So for example, when a child is first learning to find 3 times 8, they might say, okay, 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 8 more is 24. And that's how they find the answer. That's an efficient, solid strategy. They'll become more fluent as they work with it. However, what's not helpful is when kids learn skip counting songs and then just are basically counting on their fingers to always find the answers to multiplication facts. So I once worked with a child who had learned skip counting songs, and so she never tried any other strategies for learning multiplication facts. So to do 6 times 8, she would go 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. I don't remember the two in one actually, but she'd count on her fingers. So it's 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. And though for every single multiplication facts, she had to count them out on her fingers. And that's what I mean by mindless skip counting, of just automatically just counting on your fingers to find every multiplication fact. Because there's no way to get faster at that, and it's just going to bog kids down. So I'd rather that she'd thought, okay, 5 times 8 is 40, 40, 48. That's a more efficient way to use skip counting, to know that 48 is 8 more than 40. So that's the one that's going to come next. That's going to be 6 times 8. Now, you might say, okay, Kate, that's great, but what if my kid isn't learning the facts quickly enough? And so, if you're worried that your child isn't learning the facts quickly enough, first of all, make sure you read the checkpoints. There are checkpoints at the end of every unit that tell you what kind of the average child will be able to do at this point, and what your child needs to know before moving on to the next unit. And often, if you read those, you'll be reassured because it will say your child does not need to have memorized the times 5 facts before moving on to this next unit. It will say that specifically. And we'll also give suggestions like if your child isn't so sure about these facts, stop and practice them for a couple days and then move on. So don't stop and camp out for more than a couple of days, because that can be just really discouraging to kids when they feel like they're just stuck. It can be discouraging to you too. Make sure to play the review games when they appear in the warm-up. There's a lot of review that's snuck in there in the warm-ups. And so if your child is still working on the multiplication facts in that warm-up, make sure you play that game as a way to have some quick practice. And then also, you might just want to reassure yourself by looking ahead in the workbook to see how much more practice your child will get. There is lots of practice of those multiplication facts in the review pages in third grade. So just look ahead and you will see there's a lot more practice coming. If your child doesn't have one set of facts down, they're going to get a lot more opportunities to work on them. Now, in fourth grade, so the goal is that kids will have most of the facts pretty much under control within a few seconds at the beginning of fourth grade. And if you're not sure whether your child really has that, there's some review in Unit 1 and Unit 2. And then at Unit 2, at the end of the unit, there's a checkpoint. And it provides instructions on assessing your child's multiplication fact mastery and making a plan for what to do, depending on what you see in that assessment. It's always best to base our teaching decisions off of what our kids can do, and assessment's a great way to figure that out. And you'll be able to use, there's Blackline Master 3 in the back of the book that you can use to see how your child's doing with the multiplication facts. Once you've done that and assessed your child's progress, again, make sure you read the checkpoints as you keep on moving through the book. And don't stop and camp out for more than a couple of days if there's a set of facts that your child needs to work on. And then this is very important, and sometimes it's kind of hard for parents to do this, but I really recommend that you let your child use the multiplication chart as directed in the checkpoints if they're having trouble with the multiplication facts. So, for example, when you teach your child two-digit times two-digit multiplication, if your child isn't quite solid with the multiplication facts yet, I really recommend you let them use a multiplication chart with all the answers. You'll find it in the back of the book. And that's because otherwise they'll get so bogged down figuring out the answers to the multiplication facts that they'll have trouble learning the process for learning two-digit times two-digit multiplication. Same is true of long division. And often when kids have reached, if you've really been working on the multiplication facts and your child isn't quite fluent with them in the middle of fourth grade or so, working with the multiplication chart sometimes just provides that visual memory that kids need to just take the next step of fluency. And so don't let your child use the multiplication chart when they're practicing multiplication facts, of course, but definitely let them do it when they're working on those higher level skills so they can continue to make progress with their grade level skills and not get bogged down, and also use that as a way to visually learn some of the facts. And here's just a picture of that Blackline Master to help with assessing the facts. There's the multiplication assessment, Blackline Master 3, and then the multiplication chart, Blackline Master 2, that you can use as just a help for your child as they're learning those more complex topics. Okay, so that's kind of a quick tour through multiplication and division facts in third and fourth grade. And now we're gonna get into how to prep for the year. And this list that I'm going to share with you now, it'll be included in the handout that I'll email you after the presentation. So look for that there and know that you'll have it soon. Okay, so to prep for the year doesn't take a whole lot of time, but spending half hour to 45 minutes on it before you start will really make a huge difference. So first, read the introduction. I stick a lot of good nuggets in those introductions, so please make sure you take a look at it and refer back to it if you have questions during the school year. You might find that your question is answered back in that introduction. Second, make your math kit. So what you'll need in your math kit is listed on page 9 in third grade and pages 8 and 9 in fourth grade. And this is the list of what you'll need in third grade. And I have a math kit all ready here to show you. So you can see I like to use shoe boxes. These are just these little plastic shoe boxes that you can get from Target or Walmart for a couple of bucks. And they're just a really simple way to organize that. So this plus base 10 blocks is everything you need to teach third or fourth grade math with confidence. It doesn't have to be complicated to be effective, and this is nice and cheap and easy. I also recommend using Ziploc bags. I'll show you this. These are the ones with the sliders where it just opens and closes really easily. They just make it faster to close the bags and get cleaned up, which is always good for moving on to the next thing. So here in third grade, what you'll need is you will need counters, about 50 counters of 2 colors so you can use them as game pieces. You'll need base 10 blocks. That's my second shoe box here. Base 10 blocks are great for showing place value in our number system. So they have 4 sizes. There's a teeny tiny little block that stands for 1. There is 10 of those get put together to make a rod, which represents 10. 10 of those get put together to make a flat, which represents 100. And then 10 of those get put together to make a big cube, which represents 1,000. And so they help kids develop a strong understanding of place value. You'll use them especially for modeling long division and for modeling addition and subtraction. Let's see, then you'll also need coins and plain money for third grade. For your coins, if you use second grade, you just need to add 2 quarters, and you need to add 10 ones, tens, and hundreds to your second grade kit, as well as $10,000 bills. And I know a lot of play money kits don't come with $1,000 bills. So if you need those, take a look at the Blackline Masters in the back of the book. There's printable $1,000 bills you can use there. And you don't need them for very long or very often, but they're just a fun way to model some of those big numbers with kids. Okay, you'll also need a clock for third grade. And this is a clock with hands that you can move. It's really helpful when you teach elapsed time. You'll also introduce fractions in third grade, and you'll use fraction circles. These are kind of a mess, but they're just circles that you use to represent halves, fourths, thirds, so on, and helpful to help kids see how each fraction relates to one whole. You'll need just a simple ruler with inches and centimeters on it. Two packs of playing cards. I recommend getting ones that have different colors on the back so you can sort them out easily. And then also two dice. And then you'll need a dry erase marker for drawing on that dot array. I'll show you that in a page protector in just a minute. Okay, for fourth grade, it's very similar. You'll need 40 counters of two different colors. You'll need play money. You need 21s, 2010s, and 10 hundreds. In fourth grade, you'll also use pattern blocks. So if you used first grade math with confidence or kindergarten, you probably already have these. In first grade, we use them for shapes and spatial reasoning. But in fourth grade, we'll use them for adding and subtracting mixed numbers and fractions. We'll use the big yellow hexagon here as stand for one whole, and then we'll use the other pieces to stand for fractions of it. They're a really fun way to represent fractions. And then you'll also need a ruler. And this was the first year for a protractor, which a lot of kids get excited to use. Any kind of basic clear plastic protractor works just fine. And then again, you'll need two packs of playing cards and two dice. So that's all you need for your math kit. And a lot of it is things that if you've used previous levels, you already have ready to go. Okay, then after that, you'll need to also get your Blackline math grid ready. And my recommendation for Blackline Masters is that you copy or print them out and then you put them in a binder. The Blackline Masters are available in the back of your instructor guide, or they're available at my publisher's website, welltrainedmind.com/MWC. And I really recommend putting them in page protectors in a binder because then they're protected and you have them all in one place. So you can see here, I have a tab for every grade level in Math with Confidence so that they're all in one place. And then I just stick them in page protectors. So for example, here's the memory work for third grade. There's let's see, here's the dot array and L cover. And if some of them require being cut apart, like for fraction or for quadrilateral cards, or there's some pentominoes here in third grade. And I do recommend just leaving them intact until you get to them, because often if you cut them ahead of time, they'll be gone by the time that you actually need them. And then after you cut them, just stick them right back inside the page protector so that you just know exactly where they are and they're ready to go. And fourth grade is similar. Here's that multiplication chart. And there's just a bunch of, not too many, but having them all in those page protectors really helps keep things organized and helps you keep moving through your lessons. Okay, and then last, this is a great time to find the answer keys and the other helpful resources that are available to help you teach this year. So look for your answer keys at the end of each unit. You'll find all of the practice and review pages there. Answers to the lesson activities pages are right in your scripted lesson. You'll also find the scope and sequence at the back of the book. This is great if you need, again, if you need to tell a homeschool evaluator what your child's learning this year or submit information about what your child's learning. Here's all the major objectives from all the units. There's a list of the memory work that your child will learn over the course of the year. It's kind of a fun way to keep track of what they've learned and show them how many different things they've memorized. And then here's the complete picture book list for each unit. This is the picture book that's included in the enrichment lesson at the end of each unit. And you can use this to request books from the library or to buy books. But also don't feel like you need to have physical copies of all the books. You can skip these entirely and your child will still have a great year of math. But if you don't have time to get them from the library or don't want to have to buy them all, you can find read alouds of a lot of these books on YouTube. And some people have even put together playlists of the Math with Confidence books in order. So just look for that on YouTube if you'd like to have your child listen to the books that way. There's also a full materials list at the back of each book. It includes what you'll need in your math kit, as well as the other little household things you'll need over the course of the year. And don't let this list be daunting. It's mostly just really common household things like a large piece of paper or a wooden stick, six dice, scissors. And all of the things that are marked with stars are completely optional. They're part of those optional enrichment lessons. And often you'll find multiple options within those enrichment lessons so that you can adjust them based on whatever you have around your house. I also just wanted to make sure you know about the Well-Trained Mind, their website for like tips and tricks and helps for math with confidence. There you'll find the sample of the instructor guides that has the Blackline Masters in them. So if you download that sample and go to the end, you can print the Blackline Masters out without having to copy them or cut them out of the back of your instructor guide. There's also samples of the workbooks. If you haven't had a chance to buy the workbook yet, you can take a look at the samples there. And then in third grade, there's a few pages that rely on color to be able to complete them. And so if you have a student with color vision deficiency, you can download alternate pages there. After third grade, that's no longer an issue. So that's last grade level where you'll need a few supplementary pages. Also wanted to make sure you know about the Math with Confidence Facebook group. This is just a wonderful community of parents all using Math with Confidence and talking math and supporting each other. If you have questions about using Math with Confidence, want to share a victory or something cute you did with the lessons, this is a great place to do it. All right, so now I'm just going to get into some common questions that I often get from parents about Math with Confidence, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. So, first big question, how do I know which level to use? And for this, I suggest make sure you read the placement advice in the sample. I'll talk about the kind of the key skills here in a minute, but make sure you take a look at that placement advice and make sure you're using that to place your child in the program if you're new to it, not just their grade level on paper. Because really what you want is for your child to be at the Goldilocks challenge level, not too hard, not too easy, but just right. Math is no fun if it's super boring. If it's super easy, if your kid's rolling their eyes at you because you're just asking questions they totally know, that's not very much fun for a child. Or if it's really hard and frustrating, if it requires too much abstract thought, if it requires skills that your child hasn't mastered yet, that's very frustrating too. So putting your child at that level where it's just a little bit hard, a little bit challenging, but not very much. It's very important for having a good year for both of you. And the goal is really that your child will end the year feeling confident and positive about math. If they're placed too high or too low, they'll end the year feeling that math is boring or math is really, really hard. So for starting third grade math with confidence, your child should understand place value in three-digit numbers, know the addition and subtraction facts to 20, be able to add and subtract two or three-digit numbers with the traditional written process, with stacking them up and borrowing and carrying or trading. And they should be able to add or subtract two-digit numbers mentally. That one's a little, they don't have to be completely fluent with something like 35 plus 78, but they should be able to take 46 plus 5 and find the answer to that mentally, because that's a helpful stepping stone with those multiplication facts. For fourth grade, your child should understand place value in four-digit numbers before starting fourth grade and be able to add and subtract those four-digit numbers with stacking them and with the written process. Your child should be able to solve simple word problems with all four operations. So be able to read a word problem that's a one-step problem and understand whether they should add, subtract, multiply, or divide. They should be able to find the area and perimeter of rectangles, read, write, and compare simple fractions, and know most of the multiplication division facts like we discussed earlier in the presentation. Another common question I get is, how do I know whether to stick with the lesson or move on? And in general, I recommend that you keep teaching the lessons day by day through the unit until you get to the unit checkpoint, and then use that to evaluate how you're doing. Most of the skills do not have to be fully mastered before you move on to the next lesson or unit. In general, we're looking for conceptual understanding in a unit to understand the ideas of math in it, but your child doesn't need full proficiency with the skills before moving on. So for example, this is a checkpoint, I believe, from fourth grade on mental division, which has some tricky techniques in it. It can take kids a while to really be fluent at performing mental division. And so it says under is your child ready to move on? It says your child does not need to have mastered the specific skills from Unit 5 before beginning Unit 6 because she'll continue to practice. And so that practice just will be spaced out so that she'll have lots of opportunities to gain fluency. Now, this is a common question, especially at the beginning of third grade. 3 pages per lesson feels overwhelming to my child. What should I do? Going from those 2 pages to 3 can feel like a big step up. And so, first of all, really emphasize that these are pages you do together. There's 2 heads at the top of the lesson activities page to show that the two of you do it together. And there's 1 head on the practice and review pages to show that those are your child's independent work. I mean, it's fine for you to help or sit nearby, of course, but I really wanted to emphasize that lesson activities is not something your child should have to do alone. So they shouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, now I have a third workbook page. And in fact, I recommend that you do all the writing on that lesson activities page, especially at the beginning of the year. If you have a child who loves to write and wants to, that's fine. But scribing for your child also helps just demonstrate that it saves their stamina for kids who aren't very strong writers yet. And it also just demonstrates, no, I'm teaching you with this page. It is not something that you have to complete on your own. So that can really help kids just kind of chill out about it. And then also, I recommend if your child gets just really overwhelmed by it, take a piece of blank paper or construction paper and cover like everything that you are not looking at yet with your child. So if you're just on part A, cover part B and C, and just scoot that paper down as you need it. It can help your child just kind of zoom in on the part that you're talking about and just take it step by step rather than feeling overwhelmed. And then generally, if kids start the year feeling a little overwhelmed by that, within a couple of months, it starts to feel much more normal. And by the time you get to fourth grade, it's just the usual part of doing math. But related to that, and also often at the beginning of the year, I get the question, what should I do if the lessons are taking too long? So first of all, I recommend making sure that the lessons don't drag on and on. That's just no fun for anybody. Aim for attention and focus for a good chunk of time, not just getting to the end of the lesson. So you keep your focus on the learning, not just we got to check this box and move on. For a lot of families, the best way to get like sort of the best attention possible is to set a timer and then just stop whenever the timer goes off, even if it's in the middle of a lesson. So for example, you might set a timer for 15 minutes for the time with the parent, 15 minutes for independent work, and just stop when that timer goes off. You know your kid. If your kid's going to dawdle for those 15 minutes, then of course that's probably not the way to go. But having a timer, especially for the instruction with the parent, can help you kind of keep things moving and also keep you from wearing your child out. A lot of families also find it helpful to have their child complete the review page at a different time of day. So for example, you might teach the lesson, have your child do the practice page in the morning, and then have your child do the review page later on in the day. So just to break it up and have it be a different part of the day. And if you're really short on time or if the lessons are really just taking too long, it's also okay to skip the games. The games are a lot of fun. Most kids really want to do them. But keep in mind their purpose. Their purpose is to provide practice and for you to monitor your child's progress to make sure they're getting correct answers and see what strategies they're using. But they can take a while, those games. So if you want to just skip a game, give your child a few practice problems instead, you can usually look at the game board or the directions and see what kind of thing it's practicing. Have your child just practice a few of those similar problems and then just move on. People also sometimes wonder how my other 2 books, Multiplication, Division Facts That Stick, fit into the program. So I wrote the Math Facts That Stick series before writing Math with Confidence, and they're meant as a supplementary program for kids who need more help with the math facts, whether they're using Math with Confidence or a different program. And like I said, there's a lot of fact practice in Math with Confidence. So these are not needed for most kids. For most kids, we'll get plenty of practice with the multiplication, division facts just by doing their normal Math with Confidence lessons. Um, but that said, they are great for summer review. If you get to the end of third grade and want to keep the multiplication facts fresh over the summer, definitely recommend multiplication facts that stick. And I recommend division facts that stick for after fourth grade as another way to keep the facts fresh before getting into fifth. One exception to that is if you're switching to math with confidence with a fourth grader. Um, if your child used a different program last year and your child doesn't really have a lot of the multiplication facts down quite yet, I highly recommend doing multiplication facts that stick before starting fourth grade math with confidence. It will take you it's a 10-week program. Um, you might be able to do it a little quicker than that, but I do recommend making sure your child has most of those multiplication facts down before starting the fourth grade math with confidence program. Everything will go so much smoother. If they really don't have them down yet, it'll be kind of painful. So make sure that's a great way to kind of give your child a jump start. You don't have to go all the way back and do third grade. You can just do multiplication facts that stick and then jump into fourth grade. And another common question is about time. I have multiple kids. Math lessons can take a lot of time. How can I streamline the lessons? So first of all, I recommend keeping your supplies organized. Having that math kit just ready to go really helps to save time while you're teaching. And adjust the warm-up activities to fit your child's needs. If the warm-up, say, reviews the times six facts and you know your child is really fluent with the times six facts, just go ahead and skip them. It's okay to kind of edit based on what you know your child needs. You don't have to complete every single activity in the lesson activities page. Often older children love to play games with younger kids, so that can be a great way to save you a little time to get an older child started with a younger child, or skip the games and do some practice problems instead. For your older kids, teaching them to mark the tricky questions instead of interrupting you to ask about them can be a huge time saver because interruptions they just can make everything take longer. So teach your kids that if they're not sure how to answer a question on their math page or in any other subject, just to write a little question mark next to it or put a little sticky note on it, and then to keep going and to say, we'll come back to that later when I have time so that you're not interrupted. And then another way to streamline the lessons, of course, is to just skip the enrichment activities. You don't have to do them. Your kid will have a great year of math without them, or have them watch the picture books on YouTube. Those don't have to be things that you're involved with, and they're a great way to save the parents time when there's a lot of instruction going on in the house. And above all, I would just recommend that if you feel pulled in a lot of directions, really focus on teaching your kids how to read and doing their math lessons because these are core academic skills where if you give your child a solid foundation in them in the elementary years, it will just give you results all the way through. So if you have to prioritize reading and math over social studies and science, I definitely recommend doing that because those are those core skills that will really help your child with academics through their entire educational career. Um, Kids really need math instruction. A third or fourth grader is not ready to go learn math on their own. They need support, accountability, somebody to ask questions. They need encouragement when they're doing something hard. So the time you invest in math lessons and reading lessons too is really will have a huge payoff when when there's confident learners who are able to tackle higher level topics. Okay, so we are now getting to my top 10 tips for teaching math. We're almost out of time here, so I'm going to go very quickly through these. They'll also be in that handout I give you, and then we'll get to the Q&A. Okay, so first of all, avoid the curriculum overcomplication danger zone. Uh, I really recommend picking one math curriculum and just teaching it with all your heart, whether it's math with confidence or something else. Just to teach one program well rather than putting a lot of energy into trying to combine programs or add a bunch of supplements. It is just fine. I really recommend starting the school year with one curriculum, teaching it well, using everything it's got in it. And then in October, if you decide, oh, it'd be fun to have some coloring pages to go with this, or it'd be fun to add in this supplement. Those books will still be there in October and you can get them when you need them. Don't start with anything extra than just one main curriculum. Second, make sure you plan a consistent math time, at least 4 days per week. Kids learn math best when they're learning regularly, consistently, when there's not huge breaks in their learning. Quickly preview the lesson the day before. While you're cleaning up, getting everything put away before lunch or whenever, just take a quick look over the next lesson, see what you need. get a sense of where it's going, what you're going to be talking about. Just give it a quick skim so that you're ready to go the next day and mentally prepared. Above all, don't just hand your child the workbook. The instructor guide is really the main part of the program. All the teaching is in there. And that lesson activities page does not have instruction. It does not have teaching on it. And so your child, they will miss all of that good stuff if they just do the practice and review pages. Keep in mind that you are the teacher, not the curriculum. You are the person who can see your child right in front of you, who sees if your child needs an activity be adjusted, if your child has already mastered this and doesn't need to practice this, or, well, could really use a little extra practice than the book has. It's fine to modify it. I do my best to write curriculum that kind of meets the needs of most learners, but I'm not the teacher right there with the child. You're the expert at your child. So feel free to modify and adjust what I suggest there based on your child. Related to that, if there's tears or frustration, take a break, especially when kids start to get frustrated with a math concept. Often they just kind of dig in and they can't, it's hard to convince them otherwise. If they're frustrated with long division, you might just need to take a break and start fresh tomorrow. And sometimes, kids are getting sick, they're hungry, they're tired. Usually trying to really push a topic at that point is futile. So I recommend taking a break, start fresh. And expect the occasional bad day or week, especially November and February. Those can be tough months for homeschooling. Once everything isn't fresh and new anymore, or the holidays are over, it can feel a little humdrum or a little every day. And don't I mostly say that just to reassure you that when those things happen, it's not you, it's not your kids, it's just sort of the nature of being human. And so don't doubt yourself when you have the occasional bad day. And don't doubt the curriculum. It's not necessarily, don't doubt your kid. It's just kind of a confluence of factors at that point, and things will get better. Keep the end in mind and don't worry if your child isn't on grade level. So by this, I mean, by keeping the end in mind, think about what you're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, you're probably trying to graduate a child from high school who is capable in math. And to get a high school degree in most states, you can start algebra anywhere between seventh grade and 10th grade and still complete all of the required classes and also have completed a college prep math curriculum. There's a lot of mush in middle school math, and kids often kind of jump into the pre-algebra algebra sequence at different ages, depending on how ready they are for it. When kids finish math with confidence in sixth grade, they'll be ready to jump into pre-algebra in seventh grade for the most part. And so, if you find that your child is a little bit behind grade level, don't worry about it because there's going to be plenty of time for them to kind of get into that sequence and be successful in math and get all the credits they need eventually. It's more important to get a solid foundation than to be rushing through. Model a growth mindset in math for your child. So just encourage your child that they're capable of learning math and that being good at math is about hard work, perseverance, about thinking hard about problems. It's not about whether they're innately mathy or not. And then also cultivate a growth mindset in math for yourself. You may have not felt very confident in math. It may have not been your best subject. You may have hated it. It may have made you cry. But I hope that you will believe that you actually can learn math. So many of the pilot test moms have told me about how pleasantly surprised they've been to realize that they now understand math concepts that they just never understood before in their own school years. Like all of a sudden, oh, I understand what dividing fractions means. I understand why we're shifting the decimal point. Um, I hope that you are pleasantly surprised as you teach the program that your own understanding and your own skills in math will go deeper and deeper. You are doing amazing things. You're educating your children at home. You're organizing an entire school day for them, and you are very capable of learning and understanding elementary math too. Okay, so that's my top 10 tips. Look for links to the handouts and the recording in your email by sometime tomorrow. If you're watching the recording afterward, you can find the link for the handouts in the YouTube description. And then also Well-Trained Minds, my publisher, they're having their final summer sale right now. So if you haven't had a chance to buy your books yet, head on over to their website, welltrainedmind.com by Monday, August 18th. And they're offering 40% off digital copies of third and fourth grade math and 35% off the physical books. So it's a great time to get those there. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to go to the Q&A and see what questions we have. Okay, so Beth asks, do you recommend any supplemental math fact review online, for example, extra math? Most families find that they don't need any extra supplemental review, but it doesn't hurt. And it can be a fun way for kids to practice some math while getting some screen time. So things like extra math, I think that's the one that I've used the most in the past, but there's also just kind of like apps on available for iPads or for phones. And it's a great way to get some extra drill. Just make sure your child has the strategies they need to solve the problems before they're doing that drill. So they're not just kind of randomly guessing or counting or using inefficient strategies. Um, Julie says, my daughter did third grade last year, and they have to take for a test for the scholarship, and they're asked about prime numbers. And we didn't cover that subject in third grade. So it is actually in fourth grade, Julie. You'll find it, I believe. You're testing my knowledge. I wrote this a few years ago. Prime numbers are in fourth grade. They're not typically considered a third grade subject, so I don't know why she would have seen that. Often, when kids take standardized tests, like if, for example, if they take the MAP test or something, they will see lots of questions about topics that are beyond their grade level, and that actually means your child's doing really well. So usually the computerized tests start with your child's grade level, and then as your child does better, they adapt and make the questions harder and harder. So if your child is seeing things that are beyond grade level, that means they're doing well, but they won't necessarily have covered those in Math with Confidence because they're working above their grade level when they get to those questions on the test. So I will soon be teaching my 7-year-old and Erica asks, I will soon be teaching my 7-year-old and 10-year-old third grade math with confidence. Any tips for teaching third grade math with confidence to a child with severe dyscalculia with an attempt to keep both my children at the same level? Oh, that's a great question, Erica. And it can be a tricky thing to do, especially because of family dynamics. It can be hard for an older child to be at the same level as their younger sibling. So I would just recommend being a parent first, being attentive to kind of how that's playing out for your kids, and making sure to ease any angst that's going on there. Um, so for and I'd be a little concerned about the 7-year-old. I'm going to assume that you've looked at the placement advice and that this is what your 7-year-old is ready for. That's a little early for third grade, but maybe they've just really have a love for numbers and are ready for it. So for kids with severe dyscalculia, Math with Confidence has a lot of parts that are very helpful. There's a lot of visuals. It's very incremental and clear. But you may need to go a little bit slower. You might take more than one day for a lesson. And you're just going to have to kind of see day by day how it goes. That child might need to do fewer problems, and you really want to focus on that quality over quantity, over understanding what's going on rather than doing lots of problems, avoiding that frustration of it just feeling overwhelming. Um, my child has had limited exposure to division. Oh, I just lost that one. I think Donna went ahead and answered it. Uh, I'll just go ahead since I started. My child had limited exposure to division. We'd plan to do division facts that stick before starting fourth grade. Are we on the right track, or should I hold on to the division book for after fourth? Yes, you're definitely on the right track. If your child hasn't really done any division, I would recommend doing division facts that stick before starting fourth grade, because fourth grade does assume that kids have worked through the division tables up to 100 divided by 10, and that they understand the concepts of division before starting. And Nicole asks, oh, what are the red stars occasionally seen in the workbook practice pages? Those are just little challenge problems. They just try to include a star when it's something that just goes a little bit beyond kind of what you covered in the lesson, where a child will just need to reach a little bit beyond sort of what was demonstrated. And that just helps prevent frustration with kids. So when kids get to a problem like that, they know, like, oh, yeah, that's what this one's going to be a little bit harder. I'm going to have to think a little bit extra. And if those questions prove to be a little too hard for your kid, it's fine to skip them or work through them together. KR asks, we're coming from a different curriculum, and based on what you've said here, I think my child is between levels 3 and 4. Do I grab level 3 and skip the things we already know? Maybe use the section assessments to gauge things and review with the independent work pages if needed while slowing down for things we don't? Yes, that is a great way to approach it, KR. I would definitely use those unit wrap-ups to help you figure out what your child knows and doesn't know, and then slow down when you start to hit units where, oh, yep, we haven't covered this yet. Then you'll know that those are places where you can dig in. And you might also be able to combine some of the lessons if your child's, sounds like your child's a little bit older. And so usually kids who are a little bit older have just a little bit more abstract thinking skills, and sometimes they can cover things a little bit more quickly. So look for opportunities to combine lessons too. Okay. And Cynthia, oh, one more question here from Cynthia. We've loved math with confidence. My kids struggled with third grade this year and have 2 units left in the book. It's hard for me to think about delaying fourth grade, but should I consider doing facts that stick before fourth? I'm trying to, let's see. So I believe the last couple of units are elapsed time and a measure, maybe a division unit. It's been a little bit since I've looked at that table of contents. Um, so I think you should be fine not finishing those last couple of units of third grade. But if they've had trouble with the multiplication facts, you might want to spend some time on that before starting. Another option is to just continue. Sorry, I'm going to back up a second. I'm just thinking that through. Um, I guess it depends on what kinds of struggles your kids have had with third grade math with confidence. If it's a matter of struggling with the multiplication facts, I'd suggest doing units 1 and units 2 in fourth grade math with confidence. And then when you get to unit 2, you'll see that assessment that will help you see kind of where they're at. Their brains have matured over the summer. They've had a chance to to grow a bit, and they'll have a chance to warm up to get back into the rhythm of things and start working through those first couple of units. So I'd say go ahead and start, see how they're doing, and then use that assessment to make a plan after you get through unit 2. And then Cynthia also asked about what are your thoughts on the Times Tales story methods of multiplication facts? So Times Tales is a book that kind of makes up stories about the numbers to help kids remember the answers to the multiplication facts. I think it can be a fun way to kind of get those last few facts really firmly in mind. But I don't recommend using that as your starting place for multiplication because you miss out on all the benefits of really thinking through the strategies. If kids purely memorize the answers to the multiplication facts, they often don't understand really what multiplication means, which proves to be difficult in solving real world problems and applying math to real life, and also in understanding the properties of math if they haven't really worked with those numbers. Jessica asks, this will be our first year using math with confidence. We have a kiddo who's behind grade level and one going to third, so we're planning to group lessons with them both in level 3. They each have their own workbooks, and we're currently working through facts that stick first. Any tips for this style of teaching as a group? I think that sounds like a great approach. Each kid have their own workbook, do the lesson together. And then but then see, again, pay attention to your family dynamics about how it's working for the two kids to be working together. They can play the games together. Sometimes they might, though, want the one-on-one mom attention, so you might want to separate them for that, just to have a little one-on-one time. And to make sure that one child isn't answering all the questions, that can be hard in any kind of group learning situation, but especially when there's two kids. So you might even like have something that sort of indicates which child is going to answer the questions and kind of move it back and forth to show whose turn it is to answer the next question. That ensures that one child's quick answers don't keep the other child from having a chance to share their answers and doesn't short circuit the learning for the other child. Okay, well, we're 10 minutes over, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all so much for being here today. I hope you found this helpful and that it's helped you think about how to get ready and that you just have a wonderful year of math with your third and fourth graders. Happy math.